what I'm providing here is different from a typical tutorial. I believe with the tutorial what you're trying to do is teach someone how to use the code better, or to provide an example of the framework that someone's not used before. This is slightly different. I'm kind of an arts maths background, and the reason why I like Flutter is very much why I've enjoyed using React for HTML development, is that it allows me to rapidly prototype different ideas and concepts, especially when it comes to kind of mathematics, where I make a lot of mistakes and I'm not really too sure what I'm trying to create, but through experimentation often create with some interesting and nice effects. So what I'm playing around with today is just using pointer events. So you drag your finger, it adds a point to a list, and that list gets drawn, rendered to screen. In this instance, as a set of containers, so one container per point in the list. I then moved on to wanting to play around with the Flutter canvas, or the custom painter, where you draw lines and strokes and arcs and everything else like that with the canvas, and that's where things started to get interesting, and something that I wanted to kind of share with the community. So with that, if I draw a line, the code here is relatively simple. It's just the fact that my pointer gesture isn't a Flutter class, it's my own class, but basically it's got an array of points which are just instances of the offset, and so with each of those I am keeping a record of the last point. I'm incrementing I. If I've got a point last and a point now, then I draw a line between the two values using this paint object that I've created earlier. The nice thing with Flutter is that I can experiment with the framework. So like, I wasn't too sure when I first did this. I think I had something like this set up. So I had this horrible line and I was kind of like, well, that's not very good. And then as I experimented around, I realised that it's because I didn't have the stroke cap set properly. So round is kind of what I was after. There's another value here called a square, which is quite nice. But we're going to stick with round, and then I could start experimenting with the width, just making it fatter, thinner. And this is kind of the beauty of Flutter, is the fact that we're able to really quickly sort of like make small modifications, see instantaneously what an effect that would have. So I'm going to just get rid of the blue dots, because I don't think they're really kind of contributing too much right now. And I'm going to just start playing around with the stroke and the colour to kind of show you what effect that has. So the first thing I tend to do with my maths is I've got these two values. I is keeping track of which point it is I'm looking at within the array or the list. So it's incrementing each time I go through this loop. So this will be going from, we're going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. On the first loop through, when I equals 0, then you won't have a point last, and so it won't actually do anything. On the second time through, I will be equal to 1, and it will draw a line. So the first thing I can do is I create this value called R, which is this normalized representation of how far through the list I am. It starts at 0 and ends at 1, which tends to be what normalized means. It just makes it easier for me to do simple mathematics. So this value will go between 0 and 1. So if I wanted to set the stroke width, I could say that I want the width to vary in size between 0 and 150. So if I just save that now, we'll get these. That's a mess. But if I draw just one line, you'll see that it goes from thin to fat, and it looks like a comet. That to me is really cool. I can already start thinking about doing some nice things with that, which actually we'll experiment with in a minute. The next thing I'll do is like, well, I don't want it going from thin to fat. I want it to go from thin to fat back to thin again. So I'll take my value R, my value R is going between 0 and 1, and I want its pivot point to be around the middle. So I want it to go from thin to fat in the middle and then back to thin again. So what I'm thinking in my head is that pivot point is at the value 0.5. So I'll do 0.5 minus R. That value R, that result, I want it always to be positive, so I need to do absolute. And the way that I've done it, it'll actually go from 0.5 to 0 back to 0.5 again, so I need to multiply it by 2. And this still isn't quite right, so we'll just see what we've got so far. So I'm going to multiply by 100, and you'll see that this line is going from fat to thin back to fat again, so it's wrong. And this is the nice thing about experimenting, is I get my maths wrong constantly, but I'm not punished for it. This is the really nice thing about Flutter, is I can experiment. It's my little playground. It doesn't matter if I make a mistake. So the mistake is the fact that this function here, this part of the calculation here is going from 1 to 0 back to 1 again. So it's the wrong way around. I want to mirror it. So with mathematics, when you want to mirror anything, it's either you multiply by minus 1, or it's 1 minus whatever it is you've just calculated. In this instance, I know it's 1 minus. So it's now going from thin back to fat, back to thin again, which is cool. It's already creating this really nice kind of fun splodgy effect. I'm already seeing the fact it looks like some sort of worm. If I keep on dragging, it just like creates this nice effect. I've already got some ideas to play around with that. So the next thing we'll do is I'm going to change the colour. So I want it to go, I don't like it just being a solid red, and I found this nice lerp function where it will go between one value and another. Lerp you'll kind of see in Unity. I mean, it was where I've seen it the first time, and we might see it in other places, but it will go from one value to another. So if I provide a value of a mixed value of 0, it'll use completely red. If you use a mixed value of 1, it'll do it completely blue. If you have a value of 0.5, it'll mix between the two values. If we do it 0.25, it's more leaning towards the left hand side, towards the 0, so it'll be more red. If we do it at 0.75, it'll be leaning towards the right, more towards the blue end. And if I put it as R, it'll basically go from 0 to 1 as it goes down the line. Ooh. And I get a really, really nice kind of cool effect with that. And I can start playing around with different colours. That's nice. Okay, so just little things that came to mind then when I was playing with it that time round. I quite liked that it went from thin to fat. I mean, this time around now, if you look at it, it looks like some sort of worm. That's kind of cool. Actually, I guess what I'll do is I'll do two things. I'm just going to copy paste this code quickly. So I'm going to just make sure that I set I back to 0 here, and point last back to null here. And the reason why I'm doing that is the fact I can loop back over again and do two different things each time. So the first time it paints, I want it to just paint everything black. And I want its stroke width to be a little bit fatter. In fact, it'll be plus or 10 plus. Right, okay, I think this should work. Right, so I've now provided a stroke outline to my shape because I've drawn it round twice. The first time round, I'm just going to try this. I'm able to get no, can't. Right, I'm going to have to do this properly. Sorry, in JavaScript I tend to cheat. I do like little cheaty things to turn off bits of code. I'll just do it like this. So what my first loop does is it paint everything completely black, and it's doing it a little bit fatter. And the second time through, so set this back to true, it's doing exactly the same thing again, but instead of doing it 10 plus 100, whatever this is, the stroke width, it's doing it slightly narrower, and it's actually using proper colours, and I get my outline. So if I want to make that outline fatter, I can change this value here. So that's quite cool. I like that. That's nice. The next was the fact I actually saw when I was doing it the first time, it went from thin to fat. So that was using the stroke width of just simply 100 times by R. So this will be the same up here. I have to make sure that I do. Well, actually, let's see what happens when I make a mistake. Yeah, that's weird. Okay, let's not do that. Let's go back to doing something useful. So I've still got my kind of outline effect, but it's going from thin to fat, and this to me was looking like a comet. So to get that sort of effect, I'm going to make the end of it red and the back of it a kind of orange colour. I think what we could do with doing that is making it go to red quicker. So I'm going to use my math.power. Do 0.5. Not sure if this will have the effect I wanted. Kind of having the effect. It's starting to look like kind of like a comet. I think the difference with it is the fact I'm not getting that kind of nucleus to it. Kind of, I'd expect there to be a head, a body to that shape. So I'm just going to duplicate this loop again and give it another colour. So I'm going to give it brown and black, and I'm not going to have it anywhere near as fat. In fact, what I'll do is put that in the wrong place. This is what happens when you make stupid with simple mistakes. They are just simple mistakes. There we go. Right, so now I've got some sort of body to this thing. I guess what I don't want is this tail. So once it gets below a certain value, then I will get rid of it. So I'll say if paint.stroke width is greater than 10, then draw the rest of it. Otherwise, just drop it. So I'm getting a cut-off point for the tail. I can move it forward and back. That's fine, I think. Let's see if it was red instead. Oh, let's get rid of this. I think we need it the other way around. So we're going from red to black. Kind of cool. Just not got the right choice of colour. Let's flip all those around. So this is yellow, orange, and this is going to be red to black. Kind of cool. I like it. It's fun, it's silly. I can work on those values. I think the other thing that I saw was the fact that if you continue this line, they'll just keep on going there, which looks kind of cool. Starting to get some performance hit there as well, which isn't great. So if you see it, it's suddenly lagging and like struggling. So I'm going to help it by limiting the size of my array. So I've got this function up at the top that said, I'm just going to say if points dot length is greater than, say how many points, say 20. We want to remove the first one. Points dot remove at 0. So I'm going to remove the first item in the list if my length goes over 20. So we'll clear it again, and now you'll see that the tail keeps on disappearing and the performance stays nice and fast. It's got this kind of cartoon vibe to it, which is quite cool. And I could do something like, I could do a game like Fruit Ninja or something like that, doing this approach. So I like it, it's cool. I mean, what would be nice now is if after you drag it and release it, so like it disappeared or something, but I'll work on that later.